in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey, hello there. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome to Chris
Potter's post-adenoidal.
Yeah, well, I'm all adenoidal to it than I normally am. And to you, adenoidal or not, welcome to Wednesday, the 6th of March.
A great morning to own a snow ease.
Yes, indeed.
I think of you now every time there's snow out and I have to go out.
You know, you can't get them anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I know.
I have two. I'd be willing. This is a gizmo that I sold for years. It ended up being written about in the Wall Street Journal.
You were pitching for them or the product itself?
Partially my pitching
really?
for them.
Is that right? I'll be dipped.
Because of the way it started. It was such a funny story. And then that story led them to this crazy company that produced this marvelous snow removal thingamajiggy. And, well, I don't know, ended up in a book.
So wait, are they no longer making snow eases?
That is the most. That was the most screwed up company in the history of the world.
Huh.
They had a great product, never figured out how to market it. Sears got interested at one point, although Sears ain't doing so hot either. And Sears sort of rejiggered it a little bit, but I actually created a video for that role.
This is a tragic story about a market failure. This is. If there are any MBA students out there within the sound of my voice.
I'm telling you, this is a great product.
Yeah.
And
someone's got a patent out there just gathering dust.
No, I think the patent, the problem with it now, and don't think I haven't looked into doing it myself.
All right.
Me and a certain local entrepreneur. It appears to be just cost prohibitive in terms of, first of all, doing it in the United States. It's amazing.
Making a shovel.
It's amazing. Just the cost of the materials, of the plastic, of the this, of the that, I don't know. And then, I'm not one to do it. Somebody should. Somebody could make $1 gazillion. I'm telling you, it's the greatest thing.
But you wanted to made in America as a philosophical thing, or because you couldn't wrap your head around international?
No, because I wanted to have it be an American product. Right. Too expensive. I mean, yeah, you can make it in America, and if you paid your people a proper wage, the price of the product is too high for the marketplace. What do you do?
I don't know. If Robert Reich is out there, maybe he could call in this morning.
Someday when we have
Joseph
nothing to
Stiglitz.
talk about, remind me to tell you that whole story. It starts to blur for me.
If it comes
too.
to that, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, right. It's not as good as Chuckles, but it's out there. It's out there.
So what's new, Lynn Cullen? You know, I was thinking...
My shovel got stolen, and I ended up in the Wall Street Journal. I tell you now, how odd is that?
Yeah, only in America.
Only in America.
You know, the last time I was on this show, we were like... When I was on... Because I phoned in on Friday, but when I was here on Wednesday, you were like, "Oh, this story, it's not going anywhere these past few days about the police."
Well, I was upset because it was so much fun.
And yet...
We're talking about Luke and the cops and all that. Yeah, so, okay, finally something happened. But
finally. It's all about instant gratification with your generation, isn't it?
Yeah, so, yeah. But you know, the thing is now it's, to me... Now I avert my gaze because are you and I the only people not running for mayor? I was thinking actually Dan
Honorado is not running.
He said he will not run. Good.
Yeah.
Well,
Patrick Dowd also not running.
Not running. Everybody else.
There's a lot of people in the mix there. We reported yesterday Wayne Fontana, state senator.
Oh yeah,
jumping in. There are now 3 candidates, all from the South Hills.
Oh, that's smart. Okay, go for it, guys.
Well, they might, Is
Furlow in?
Furlow, last I heard, was very seriously considering it. I don't know that he's begun circulating petitions. It's a sort of an odd little dance. The petitions are due next Tuesday.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep your option open, and you only have to get a couple hundred signatures, so it's not the most burdensome thing to do.
No.
And then you have another 2 weeks to decide if you want to drop back out. So the smart play to make, I think, is to get the signatures, to go in, take the temperature of funders and whatever, and then give yourself an extra 2 weeks to decide. So even though there are people who are gathering signatures right now, they may not all end up actually on the ballot.
Okay, but you have to believe, without a doubt, that Friday was a happy day for the 2 people who were challenging Luke Ravenstahl. That'd be Bill Peduto and
Michael
Lamb. Are they the front runners by virtue of being in and already having a campaign running?
Yeah, I think that would be. So it's really hard to answer because, of course, we don't know exactly who else is in the race. About a year ago, there was an online poll, and online polls are perhaps dubious methodology, but it was interesting. They asked.
They're about as reliable as the KQV poll.
Yeah, well, slightly better than that, I would say. The KQV poll, a person can call in and vote as many times as they want. With this particular online poll,
you can only vote once.
It's hard. Yeah, it's harder to do that. You could really do a sophisticated end run, but I don't think anybody would bother for a online poll about the mayor of Pittsburgh. But they looked at Luke Ravenstahl, Michael Lamb, Bill Peduto, and Jack Wagner, who was also one of the folks likely to run. And Ravenstahl came in first, somewhere in the low 30s. Wagner came in second. And they were all within about 4 or 5 points of each other. But, I think you'd have to say that Wagner would be a strong candidate just based on name recognition. His niece, of course, is the Allegheny County Controller. He himself has experience in city government. So, he would be a strong candidate. Would he be a front runner? I don't know. The big problem, the big challenge here, and we have a story in this week's issue about this, is you've now given yourself a few weeks to get a campaign up and running. First of all, a lot of the most obvious choices for campaign staff have been soaked up because Peduto and Lamb have them. But the real issue is money. Because there are these campaign finance rules now that basically limit the amount of contributions, the size of the contributions you can get. So you can't just have somebody give you $50,000 or a handful of people give you $50,000.
What is it? 4,000 in the primary, 4,000.
4,000 from a political 4,000 from a political campaign, 2,000 from an individual.
Just a second. I'm getting. Is our audio and video okay?
Yeah, it should be.
As far as we know.
Okay, because...
Why, somebody just said program and now you're upset?
No, Ed says don't seem to be working.
Oh, well.
So you think it's his problem?
Ed, that may be the easy way out.
Okay, check it out, though. And if
you may be one of the lucky ones, my friend. I'm talking campaign finance.
That's true, and I was starting to get a little.
All right.
bored,
Okay, so
too.
I'll stop.
Here's what I think makes it more interesting. Luke had almost $1 million.
Yeah.
He had 900,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I find, because somebody emailed me the other day and said, so what happens to that money? Well, the answer, as I understand it, is an outrage to me. If I give money to a candidate, and then he doesn't run.
You want your money back?
I want it back.
Yeah.
I don't want him giving it to another candidate. I don't want him giving it to candidates for other offices. What the hell is that about?
Well, I mean, first of all, candidates have always been able to do that and have always done it. I mean, every year you'll see candidates giving each other money. Bill Peduto obviously received money from Rich Fitzgerald. It may be that people gave Rich Fitzgerald money, not expecting it to end up in Bill Peduto's pocket. So there's nothing unprecedented about that.
No, but they made these rules, the PALs.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but those rules have always been in place. It's always been possible for political campaigns to give each other money. Some politicians set up separate campaigns to do precisely that, but you can contribute out of your own. Bill Peduto could give $1,000 to, say, Natalia Rudiak if he wanted. He probably has, for all I know. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, and I read that he could turn all 900,000 over to his brother.
No. Yes, to his brother, yes.
Because that's a state candidate.
Yes, that is, yes.
There's no limit at all.
What he can't do is give all of that money to some other candidate that he prefers because, again, the campaign finance rules would apply. I mean, technically speaking, I shouldn't say that because there's actually an open question about whether any of these rules are enforceable. There may be a court challenge before this is all done. But if a candidate is going to play by the rules, they can only accept a few $1,000s from any given source, including the mayor. Now, I should add this. What the mayor could do is, or allies of the mayor or foes of Bill Peduto could create a separate campaign committee and call it Pittsburghers for a Better Tomorrow. And then the mayor could give unlimited sums of money to that PAC and then have them spend money independently, like independent expenditures, running ads that say Bill Peduto used to get drunk and fall off the bar stool at Cappy's or whatever it was they wanted to say. That could still happen.
I hate this stuff. Okay, so there's a report out today.
Yeah.
Just broaden this boring discussion.
Jeez.
The Republicans who were hoping to be the Republican presidential nominee, that Washington watchdog group, CREW?
Oh, yeah.
Committee for Responsible whatever.
Yeah,
right. They say that all of these guys had lots of money left over and that they spent it on things like high-priced travel.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, chauffeured travel, private jets, luxury travel, hotels. Okay, and it says Melanie Sloan, executive director of CREW, says the scandal here isn't what's illegal.
Right.
It's what's legal.
Sure.
When people make a contribution to a candidate, they're making a contribution to the candidate, not the candidate's post-campaign lifestyle. And this begs the question of, well, then why is Jesse Jackson Jr. going to prison?
Right.
I'm serious.
Right. No, it's
asking.
very. Yes. No. That's a really good question. To localize it again, we did a story about a year ago. Luke Ravenstahl spent some of his campaign contributions to go to the Super Bowl. And he's able to justify that because he met potential funders in some luxury box down there or whatever, or some pregame thing, and was able to chat them up about the campaign and perhaps raising more money. So yeah, the distinctions get pretty slippery. I think we saw this with John Edwards, right? That was the big scandal for John Edwards too. Was he using campaign money to pay off this woman?
Yeah, hush money.
And so on and so forth. And it's just as Ms. Sloan said, it's pretty hard to say where that line actually is.
No, so the scandal is what is legal.
Right.
And if you think it's things are squishy here locally, this state has one of the most toothless
absolutely.
campaign finance laws in the 50-state union.
It's absurd. There's no limit. It's open, absolute open season.
Which tells you what? It is essentially that is a state that has put out an invitation to corruption. Hey, if you want to buy a candidate, if you want to, I mean, this is an open for the taking here.
Yeah. Consider this: Bob O'Connor still has a campaign committee.
Well, they're saving it for Corey.
Well, yeah, but there's only so much they can do. But yeah, it freaks me out because we'll go and there's there's specific reporting periods where they have to turn into things and they post them up online at the county, and it always there's always that 0.3 of a second where you're like, huh? Because
he's running.
You see like Bob O'Connor from here, and you're just like, So old politicians never die. They just
they keep raising money.
Just keep raising money. Yeah.
I find it. I mean, I'm not in the mood to laugh about it today.
I'm sorry.
I am not.
I can tell. We could talk about something else if you want.
Okay. There's this other story that I did not even see in the Post-Gazette this morning, but saw on local news last night that I think is an outrage too, and again, sort of drops on the doorstep of Michael Huss.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Public Safety Director. Showing
again how well run our city is. Did you hear about the house in Carrick that burned down? Even though the dispatcher dispatched the fire trucks in a very timely fashion, where there was just an odor of smoke. And our crack fire department, this is what they were doing when the dispatcher was calling. They were a half mile away from the burning house. Mm-hmm. That house it's gutted. Yeah. It's gone.
Yeah.
And the dispatcher is frantically trying to even at one point saying, hurry it up. She can't find these guys. They won't answer the phone. She doesn't know if they're on the way. Somebody says, are they on the way? I don't know. I can't find them. And she says the house is going up. The dispatcher says.
Yeah. Seems like there's a story like that every year, right?
Well, I gotta tell you.
From one area of public safety or another. It was in Snowmageddon. It was the paramedics. It was a few months ago. It was Cassandra Wade, the woman who was
What the hell is going on? Is there any oversight? Is there any sense of the, we give firefighters and police such deference. Yeah. We talk about them constantly as heroes and putting their lives in danger, which they do.
Right.
But that doesn't give them, then, this sort of open door to take advantage of their status and literally do nothing.
Right. And the fair question is, so what do all of these things have in common? They are all in the division of public safety.
They are all in the division of public safety, and a lack of supervision, a lack of getting your work done, a lack of all kinds of things.
It's a serious question.
How does Michael Huss not be, where's his head still attached to his body?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I understand.
You don't disagree.
I can't disagree. How do you... And we've talked about this before. We had a caller a week or two back who just said within the city, and this is true. I mean, I've talked to many a city employee who shared these feelings. How does this guy get away with sort of disappearing
when
just
all
from
of
the public radar? So all this stuff, and you could see where when it's. I mean, obviously with Chief Nate Harper and some of the things going on there, he's the guy most immediately responsible for what was happening there. So it makes sense for a lot of the focus to be on him. But at some point, when do you kind of pull back and take a broader look at the culture? And it seems not to be happening.
I mean, if Luke ends up out of the picture as a result of all this stuff, even though he says that had nothing to do with it, the fact is that it's Huss in between the police and fire and the mayor's office. And how come? I mean, there's no scrutiny. There's a jump over that? What?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it is weird. And it's if he's never around when you need him, the guy makes over $100,000 a year. So
what's he
what
doing?
are we getting for the money? Is a very fair question. I'm a little surprised to hear counsel not.
Maybe he's like J. Edgar Hoover and he has things on people.
That seems.
Maybe.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
God almighty. Okay, so obviously your paper is out today, and I take it this is a big part of it, the Ravenstallish thing.
I have a column about it, and we have a piece about how it changes the landscape politically, so yeah.
Yeah, so... Yeah, but this is going to be such a mess now. Someone might win the mayoral primary with like 6% of the vote.
Probably a little more than that, yeah, but absolutely. Yeah,
well,
I mean, it could be.
And then they're mayor. So
yeah.
I'm thinking maybe I should run.
Better hurry. You got a couple days to get this.
I could get those signatures out there in 2 seconds.
You wouldn't want that job.
Oh, I would rather die.
Plus, come on, when has Pittsburgh ever elected a shrill-voiced woman to the highest office?
Woman.
Yeah, Jewish woman to the highest office in the city.
I know. I said to my mom, I said, Mom, so I should one. She said, oh, well, do it. She said, Sadie did it.
Sadie did it.
And once she said Sadie, I couldn't think of Sophie's real name. I was going to correct her. No, her name isn't Sadie. But then I thought, what the hell was her name? Sadie sounds about right.
It's close.
It is close.
That'll hurt your write-in campaign, though, if it comes to that. So hand out those stickers.
Oh, dear God.
I mean, I'll tell you, the smart thing to do would be it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because, again, the South Hills now does have 3 candidates. I don't expect them to all be in there at the end of the
and let's name those. That would be Wagner,
Wayne Fontana,
Lamb,
Jack Wagner, and Michael Lamb.
Now, the East End only has, at this point, Peduto. And
Furlow if he gets in.
As
he says
who
he's
will
going
try to outflank Peduto on his left, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing about Furlow is he does have. I mean, he obviously has this legacy of being
it's a legacy,
radical,
but I don't know how much it's true anymore.
I think that would be sort of the question. He is, after all, he occupies a leadership post on the Urban Redevelopment Authority Board. He's been very closely tied to the mayor.
He's been very closely tied to the Ravenstall.
So I don't know that he quite sells that the way he might have been able to a few years ago. And then you've got Darlene Harris from the North Side. And, at this point, she's the only North Side candidate.
That's right.
So, does she have to play well citywide? I think this is exactly the question that people are sort of wrestling with. Interestingly, at this point, although Jake Wheatley, the state representative who represents the Hill District and some of the surrounding area, although he's said to be pondering a bid, the hour's getting late and he hasn't gotten in. And that means there's actually, at this point, as best I know, there's no African-American.
I thought there was some mutterings about Ricky Burgess.
I think it's highly unlikely that Ricky Burgess would run.
Well, you're shocked there's no African-American in the race?
I wouldn't say I'm shocked. I think it's worth noting.
I think it's shocking enough there's Darlene Harris.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Otherwise, it's the usual white male scrum.
Yeah.
It's, come on, guys.
Yeah.
It's Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I just like a Darlene Harris candidacy. A Darlene Harris mayoralty would be a thing to see.
Okay, so now why you're this is
she's just like she's so if you go down the hallway at the city council, Ms. Harris's door, outside his door, she has these little bronze dog and cat statues flanking either side.
I was afraid you were going to say lawn jockeys.
No. I could just imagine the Caligiuri statue just getting melted down to create these big-eyed puppy statues on the entrance to 414 Grant or whatever. I just think it would be hilarious. I mean, she's sort of fallen upwards for much of her career, you know.
Yes, she has. So let's talk about it. I mean, you're laughing, but you're not saying what you really mean. Is she not the brightest
it's just,
bulb in the?
I mean, I haven't seen over the course of many years.
She's not impressive, God knows. I mean, she doesn't. She's not an orator. She doesn't either sound or look the part of a leader, and yet she's been good at she's actually been good at positioning herself in these sort of parliamentary squabbles. She's first of all, I should say she's a strong advocate for her neighborhoods and for her community, which is what you expect a city councilor to be. She's kind of fallen into this leadership position because she also has been fairly shrewd about sort of exploiting these kind of factions on council. You know, she sort of flip-flopped she was in the mayor's camp, then she joined the Petuto camp so she could be a city council president, and then she was back into the mayor's camp so she could be city council president. I think, you know, so in some ways that speaks to her savvy. On the other hand, you know, and I think this is sort of where I have a concern is that also speaks to somebody who maybe doesn't have a hell of a strong vision for, you know, what she believes and where she's going to carry it. Power and the job.
And so I have this column this week that kind of says, you know, what was the Ravenstall administration about? And in a lot of ways, to me, it was about a sort of a placeholder administration that somehow managed to last the better part of a decade.
Well, he was a lucky guy because he came. You're right. There was no vision there. There was no, you know, the list of accomplishments is. Well, you know, we're generous in allowing him to claim some of it. He just happened to be there when these things, or in some respects, didn't stand in the way of them. This guy had no vision, no ideas. But let's remind ourselves, he hadn't sought the job.
Well, then he did seek it. I mean, you can't pretend that he's just totally a victim of circumstance when he did, after all, run for the post twice. Yeah, I mean, for me, the saddest thing and the thing that struck me most about his press conference was when he was asked what was like the best moment. He said the Pittsburgh Promise, which was over and done, and it was over and done in the first 6 months of his thing. And so you kind of feel like that's sad. Here's a guy who will have been mayor for 7 years. And the best part of it was over before he even kind of made it for drinks.
You know, but he can say we're on the rise.
He can. And he has said that.
This, the that. Yeah, but that sort of happened. Those things are always bigger than any elected official, and I would say that of anybody. I would say that of if it had been Bill Peduto or anybody had been mayor, it's always bigger than any one politician. So, you know, so what I kind of say in this column is, you know, the thing is, it's really hard to get, once a mayor in this town is elected, it's really hard to get rid of them, even if they're not entirely sure they want to be there themselves. I mean, that's what we've learned from Ravenstall. And so when we look at these candidates, I think the thing is to ask ourselves is, are they running because they have a strong sense of what they want to get done, or because they simply don't have anything else to do? Well, the only person who I feel, has spent a lifetime dreaming of what he would do is Peduto.
Yeah, I mean, Peduto clearly is the guy who has put his vision front and center.
This is a guy who wants the job because he has ideas for how to make this city bigger and better. And why wouldn't you vote for that guy?
Yeah, I mean, because I think a lot of folks don't pay that much attention. You know, I think that's why familiar names seem to keep circulating around. You know, I think some of that stuff, you know, Bill Peduto is a little wonky. Let's be honest.
No, he is.
A lot of that stuff is, and you know, and I've faulted him for this in the past. You know, a lot of his stuff, whether it's by virtue of his own interests or the district that he represents, which is one of the most affluent, you know, a lot of it doesn't necessarily, a lot of this kind of good government reform stuff feels pretty remote and abstract to people who are just barely getting by in a lot of working class neighborhoods in the city. So, I think that is something he has to think about. I will say this, though, you know, for him and for Michael Lamb both, these guys got in the race. They didn't have to. Michael Lamb is going to be controller for another 2 years. Bill Peduto could have run for his own seat again if he wanted. They got in the race against a well-funded incumbent in a town that it's really hard to beat incumbents. They put themselves on the line when it wasn't politically necessarily expeditious to do so.
And now everybody.
And now all of a sudden everybody else senses an opportunity. And I think just on a very basic level, we should examine all these candidates for the tenor of their ideas. We won't be hearing those just yet. It's too soon. You know, you got to give them time to get their signatures and whatnot. But as the weeks go forward, I think we really have to bear in mind, like, who's got the ideas, who's really out there with a vision for the city, and who just spotted a chance to squeeze on in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's what I would say about any of these folks. They all deserve a look, but they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt.
And on that, we'll wrap that semi-dull conversation up.
Jeez. Why do I come here? I could have gotten this abuse by staying at home and drinking coffee this morning.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
So mean.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for our special summer camp section. Plus, Joel McHale, Lord of the Dance, and the latest news on Ravenstall and the upcoming mayoral election. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education, brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, we're back. Chris Potter, moi. And Chris, I've got a whole bunch of stories here, things.
I can see.
Well, they're related, and I want to talk about this with you.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure where to start. I get this crap from...
Sounds great, whatever it is.
I get this crap from a conservative action alerts.
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah. One of those groups you wonder, how the hell did I get on this list?
Yeah, well, somebody must have put me on.
Sure.
Who the hell knows?
As a joke.
Just to torture me. And I invariably just delete them. I don't look. For some reason last night, I thought I'd take a look. And it's good to take a look at this because then you see...
The madness,
but you see why there's all those other Americans, including people in your own family, who believe all this weird stuff, who are absolutely certain because they can point to a million very reliable things and organizations and journalists who are telling them this stuff.
Right.
So, all right. Let me just start with some of this screed. These come once or twice a day.
Right. And do you know the name of the group? Just to...
No, Conservative Action Alerts.
Okay. All right.
Is that who it is?
Oh, I don't know.
Conservative Action Alerts.
Oh, is this going to be about the tanks?
Yes. Oh, you know about the tanks.
I read about the tanks because I get these too.
Okay. So this is the latest thing about proving to a good percentage of your fellow Americans that Barack Obama is intent on literally taking over in a dictatorial manner, depriving Americans of their civil liberties, and he's doing it right under our eyes. Here's their latest. Obama's Department of Homeland Security has purchased 3,000 tanks for domestic use to be used on us. So this whole thing, which is just like, I would worry about the blood pressure readings of the people who write this stuff. It's just beyond belief. And they go on and on and on about these 3,000 15-ton tanks that are major combat tanks. Here I'll quote, the Obama administration is literally preparing for war. Dun, 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 but you understand it's war against us. And remember, this same department also possesses over 1.6 billion rounds of ammo.
Right.
Now that's why these guys are running out. You hear about them running out desperately getting the ammo?
So then what happens? Then what happens is when there's an ammo shortage, they circulate a thing that says, "Is the government taking ammunition off the market?" It's like, no, it's your own crazy ass paranoia that's taking it off.
This is what's so weird. The circular, how they bleat this and that, and then this is what I want to talk to you about because it's making me insane. I think. Listen, this is
why you can't read
this is the laugh line in it.
Okay.
Sarah Palin. Oh. Not one to be taken for a conspiracy theorist. So this group uses Sarah Palin as a wise, sober...
The discriminating one.
Okay, that tells you something.
Right.
Sarah believes that the executive branch is accumulating rounds of ammo in order to quell civil unrest that she believes will come because of economic collapse on our unsustainable national debt. Now, you see how they pull this all together.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything. He's still spending money. He's not doing anything about the debt. We're going to suffer. There'll be people in the streets. They're going to mow us down with their tanks and their ammo. And then they go into this. Listen to this. Georgia Representative Paul Brown. Obama's civilian military force is totally against freedom. It's exactly what Hitler did. It's exactly what the Soviet Union did. Then there's something, they found some Nobel Prize winner of something that said that he knows that the Obama administration is forcing out of the military and DHS any soldier or cop who refuses to shoot an American.
I have to say, it does sometimes happen that a cop does have to shoot an American. I just would point that out.
I've noted that too. Actually, they got no problem. Especially if they're black men. They got no problem at all.
But that's okay. I have a feeling these folks don't really think of black men as being Americans in the same kind of way the rest of us are, yeah.
Okay. Our founders knew well that big government always prefers to rule by disarmament because an unarmed populace is an enslaved populace. Let's be clear. Excuse me. Obama wants to be in full control. He hates individuals strong enough to bear arms. He wants a nation of sheep. How many more bricks will Congress allow the dictator-in-chief Obama to lay in his building of the American police state? How many more Americans will be arrested, imprisoned, or added to his personal kill list?
Look, if you were really that nefarious, would you be able to send out these emails? I mean,
Okay, so this kind of thing, and this is rather tame, I think.
I would say it's about par for the course.
Okay, par for the course. But there's hundreds of these screed writers. And you've got Fox News, you've got them, you've got Hannity and blah, blah, blah. And you can see why a whole bunch of Americans are in fear that this country is turning against them.
But let me ask you this, Lynn. Do you know that the Department of Homeland Security is not buying 3,000 tanks? Can you prove that to me? Did you look it up? I haven't.
No, I did not.
See?
So I wondered, I mean, was there a purchase of tanks? I don't know, because facts don't matter much.
Plus, you'll go crazy. You will go crazy chasing down, because in the past, I've looked at stuff like, that seems ridiculous. What's the story there? And it's always something completely innocuous or just totally made up. But eventually you would drive yourself crazy just trying to chase that stuff.
But here, I want to muddy the waters.
All right, muddy away.
Oh,
here we go.
Let's do this. Joe writes,
based on the dreck you just read.
Dreck being a Yiddish word meaning crap.
Yes, hey!
Based on the dreck you just read, where were these crazies during the 8 years of Emperor Bush's reign?
Yeah, well, see, they were on the inside then.
Yeah.
It's only oppression when it happens to you.
Okay, so here's a story out today.
Okay.
And it says this. ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, which we would certainly not put in the same political realm as the folks I just read to you from.
Right.
The ACLU has launched a nationwide campaign to assess police militarization in the United States.
Right.
ACLU affiliates in 23 states are sending open records requests to hundreds of state and local police agencies requesting information about their SWAT teams, about their use of drones, GPS tracking devices, how much military equipment the police agency have obtained through the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security, and how often and for what purpose their National Guards are participating in enforcement of drug laws. Okay, now wait a minute. Sounds like the ACLU has some concerns that sound vaguely like
those of our crazy right-wing
groups.
brethren. Yes.
All right.
Well, let's put it this way. A big storm strikes the East Coast. Some of us try to explain that in terms of climatological or weather patterns involving high pressure fronts and low pressure fronts. Some of us try to explain it as the activities of an angry God who's upset that we might legalize gay marriage someday. Okay? Both of us notice the same meteorological phenomenon, but one of us is crazy and one of us isn't. Right? I mean, so yes, it's absolutely legitimate to worry about government surveillance. Although, as Joseph noted, it's no new story that some of this stuff has been going on. But to the extent to which you blame it on some sinister whatever by the Obama administration, as opposed to local police departments looking to cash in because there's money available to purchase new SWAT equipment and things like that, or because of a general disparagement of protest in general. I mean, what I always find striking is the people who are... Do you remember a few years ago when there was that big deal about how the state of Pennsylvania was paying this firm to monitor protest groups?
Yes.
Almost all the protest groups being monitored were like anti-fracking groups, environmental organizations, and things like that.
Right.
It tends to be when the boot heel comes down, it typically tends to be at the local level by these local officials who are scared of kids with bandanas around their noses, and that's why these guys don't get that upset at them, because they hate the kids with the bandanas around their faces too.
Right.
But so they're picking only the guy who they hate, the president, and stretching to make everything tie into him. Some things do tie into him. The use of drones and stuff like that is clearly an issue. But they're really not particularly interested in what happens at the local level, because it's not as easy a sell for them, because that would mean realizing that you can't break this stuff down purely in terms of ideology. Well,
you'll recall that in 2009, shortly after Barack Obama took office for the first time, and appointed Janet Napolitano as his head of Department of Homeland Security, her department came out with a report which suggested that we needed to pay attention, and police departments needed to pay attention to the right-wing groups that were fomenting this kind of thing. And all hell broke loose. Fox... Limbaugh, all of them, they went insane. The Obama administration criminalizes conservatives. They're out to shut us down, get us. So that, and depressingly, and it was an indication of the kind of thing that the Obama administration would do quite a bit to the dismay of its supporters, is Napolitano backed off that so fast, it made your head spin. Right. That's the thing. If this is a dictatorial administration, they're doing a terrible job. Yeah, I know. And this horrible socialist. Have you noticed the stock market is higher than it's ever been in its history, with a socialist at the helm of the country? Try to figure that one out, you dimwits. Why isn't Ted Nugent dead or in jail? Why is he at the State of the Union address? Like, what the hell kind of crackpot dictatorship is this if we can't even put Ted Nugent
under the ground or behind bars.
I
I just thought, why is Rush Limbaugh still on the air if he's such a brutal dictator?
Right.
I mean,
Why
that's
didn't
just amazing.
Why didn't Obama bring Hugo Chavez to Sloan Kettering and save him
Yes, excellent question.
instead of leaving him to those Cuban doctors
That's
who, of
right.
course, killed him dead
Because socialized medicine doesn't work. And nobody ever dies of cancer in the American healthcare system.
No. Thank you very much for completing my thought. Okay. Okay. So if you can still stick with these are all these things that are in my head today. So the Southern Poverty Law Center, do I have that right? Yeah. Yes, please. Came out with one. They're probably the best group in the country for monitoring hate groups and scary groups. And they've come out with a new report, and it says that the attacks inside the country initiated by far-right groups or individuals peaked at more than 500 in the year 2008, and has remained at more than 300 per year when this is such an increase. In fact, there has not been anything approaching this kind of level of activity on their part than just months before the Oklahoma City bombing, the worst terrorist attack by American terrorists in this country. Meanwhile, congressional hearings, of course, have been held. You'll recall Congressman Peter King of New York on the threat that American Muslims present.
Yeah. And it's statistically
it is like it is a blip.
Yeah.
A blip. The number of fatalities or injuries from terrorist acts by American Muslims in the last 2 years, none. Okay? That is not the case for far-right groups. And that would include the killing of doctors,
right?
Abortion doctors. Would there ever be a congressional hearing on the danger of American right-wing terrorist groups?
Right.
Who clearly, and the Department of Homeland Security will tell you, and the Southern Poverty Law Center will tell you, that they are the threat. The growth. Oh, here it is. I knew I wasn't looking at the right thing. Here it is. The number of patriot groups is up 7%. The number of hate groups, that's a different category than patriot groups. Patriot is actually worse than hate groups.
See, that just shows how the Southern Poverty Law Center hates our country.
Yes, because patriot groups tend to have sort of military offshoots, right? The number of patriot groups reached an all-time high in 2012. These are groups of 1,360 such groups. And we need the Department of Homeland Security to ramp up its surveillance, I guess, of these groups.
Yeah, and then finally they'll have a use for all those tanks. That's what upsets me as a taxpayer. Those tanks are probably moldering in a warehouse right now. They could be rolling over right-wingers even as we speak.
The reality
That's the change I voted for.
The reality was in 2009, when Napolitano backed off her own report about this danger, she actually, and I guess the Obama White House, stripped down its domestic terrorism unit. Almost made it invisible. Right? Right. And that was because of the huge backlash by, the right wing. Right. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but this is the fourth straight year of explosive growth of patriot and militia groups. We have never seen, this is the Southern Poverty Law, this kind of growth in any group that we have covered. And the way that SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law, defines patriot group, listen to this. And remember, there's over 1,000 of these groups. It defines it as a group comprised of conspiracy theory-minded individuals who believe the federal government is run by globalists, secret globalists, aimed at taking away our freedoms and establishing a global world order based on socialist principles. So that's different from a hate group.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know how many of these groups are in this area, are in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Ohio?
Yeah, quite a few.
I don't have the number, but a ton.
They do a map every year.
A ton.
That show you.
We are way up there. So, do you want your police department to have tanks and military stuff to take on these people or not?
You know, look, the Tea Party folks couldn't get up a handful of poll watchers on election day, so I'm not terribly worried about their ability to mobilize effectively within the Pittsburgh area per se. So, you know, no, I don't. I just, you know, and with all due respect to the Southern Poverty Law Center, they did one a few years ago, and we looked at some of the groups who were identified as being in Western Pennsylvania. And some of these folks, I mean, there's no question that what you said they believe.
That's all true.
They believe that. I would say that.
Were they a threat?
I would say that these guys, what these guys were a threat to do was to occupy a table at Starbucks for hours on end, talking to the other 4 people in the group. You know what I mean? Like, and then nobody else could sit down. I would say that was. So I think generally speaking, I don't question the broader finding that there's a rise in this kind of stuff. I just think looking around is enough to suggest that that's
many of these groups are hapless.
Yes,
many of these groups. Yeah. I'll never forget when the Bush administration trotted out this great terror cell they found down in Miami. These guys who were going to take down the Sears Tower in Chicago and all this other stuff, and they were meeting in some garage or someplace, and they didn't. They had a wish list of things they needed to get, you know, their and on the first thing of boots and uniforms was the first thing. Because they would really like some shoes, please, and they needed money for a bus ride to get them to Chicago. And recall the Bush administration. Their case against these guys. The soap operas were broken into that day. The soap operas were stopped, and the president and the vice president and Tom Ridge and who knows who else talked about this horror. And then when the actual indictment was shown, people were laughing so hard about this they couldn't see straight. It was cartoonish. In fairness, I mean, although the Obama administration doesn't trumpet these things but this tactic of sort of finding people who are only, I think the word is aspirational terrorists. Yes, exactly.
And then sort of pretending to give them the means and the opportunity, and then you bust them. Right. That is a bipartisan thing. I mean, you had who was it? Melanie Sloan, who said the biggest crimes sometimes are the most objectionable stuff is what's legal, not what's illegal. I think a lot of times the biggest crimes are the things that happen bipartisan, and I think this is a perfect example. We got to get a break in here. Yep. Be right back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to BurkeBargains.com for great deals on museums, shows, and meals from your favorite local restaurants. This week only, get discounts up to 30% on gift cards to Hyde Park. Supplies are limited. BurkeBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. BurkeBargains.com.
I didn't know about chronic obstructive pulmonary disease until I took the wheel and lent my support to Drive for COPD. Help Americans take action against this leading cause of death by logging on to driveforcopd.org to learn more. I'm Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, and I drive for COPD.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All right, so I just see something here reminding me that, so now there's a hue and cry about the governor taking gifts that he shouldn't have taken and he has to pay back or whatever.
From UPMC.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Yeah, he got to go see the Winter Classic.
Oh, he got that from UPMC?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there was another one where some guy in Pottsville flew him somewhere, a guy who had some kind of a business, and then lo and behold, 10 months later, the governor signed a bill that really helped that guy's business. I'll tell you guys, this government is so corrupt. State and local. Corrupt! Speaking of bipartisanship and the militarization of our police, it was the Reagan administration that really got this SWATification of American police really underway. But since the Reagan administration, no administration, including Clinton and Obama, has rolled any of that back.
Right.
The only vague attempt to do so was actually done in W's administration, most shockingly. See, there's something called Byrne grants. Everybody loves them. B-Y-R-N-E. They're named after somebody, probably a congressman. And Byrne grants make available to cities and police military stuff, and whether they need them or not. Like you said, if somebody offers you an Abrams tank, you say, "Hey, yeah, man, I'll take it."
Yeah, I would. The kid would love it.
Under millions of pieces of military equipment for battlefield use have been transferred to local police departments, including machine guns, tanks, armored personnel carriers, helicopters, bayonets.
Bayonets?
And a lot of that happened under the Clinton administration. There has not been any effort to quantify exactly this militarization since the middle 90s, when it was just burgeoning then. So it's unclear, but every city in this country, including cities as tiny as like 5,000 people, have SWAT teams now. And here's one. There was a big to-do in Keene, New Hampshire recently, when the mayor or something said that the city was going to purchase an armored personnel carrier. And the citizenry of this bucolic little New England town said, "What? We don't need an armored." And guess what? They got their $400,000 armored personnel carrier because they got it essentially for nothing. It was a grant from the Department of Homeland Security. What a waste of our money.
And they'll use it, too. That's the thing. And once you have the toy.
That's the thing. And here's where they're using it. All these SWAT teams, you know what they're doing? They're being used in drug enforcement. And they're breaking down people's doors to serve warrants for crimes that they aren't even sure have been committed. It says here, police departments in Maryland, they do know this has been quantified, are using SWAT tactics in precisely the ways that critics claim they would be, to break into homes, serve warrants on people suspected of low-level drug crimes, and many times these SWAT teams do not even find enough contraband to make an arrest. There have been no calls to reform this kind of thing, which is why the ACLU has begun this effort to ascertain just how out of control this SWAT stuff is and what these SWAT teams are being used for. And it turns out that it's created almost an entire industry. See, people get rich off this.
To localize a little bit, there was a situation last year, and we were going to do a story, but actually one of the TV stations beat us to it, where the Pittsburgh SWAT team was called in for a guy, I think he was in South Oakland somewhere, who would basically hold himself up in his bedroom by himself, like with a knife. And they called SWAT out. They called SWAT out for that. And it's just like, at no point did anybody plausibly. This was not a hostage situation.
Right.
This was himself putting himself at hazard, and they called in SWAT for it because it was a standoff situation or something.
No, because
and we looked
get
at
off being it. You got it. You want to use it.
You got it because they're hanging around. What's that stuff doing? It's just sitting in the garage somewhere.
Well, we saw quite a panoply of this kind of crap during the G20.
Sure, yeah.
When they rolled out the city, had these devices that look like, and if you were a right winger, it would make
absolutely.
it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is again why it's so striking when things like the Sandy Hook shooting happen, that their response is always from the right, from the NRA. On the one hand, they warn of government jackbooted thugs, and yet their response is always solutions that would create the appearance of jackbooted thugs.
Exactly.
If your idea is that schools are these indoctrination centers, as many right-wingers believe,
why you want government?
Why you'd want armed police there as your solution is just utterly mystifying to me. Except that you, in some ways, have some kind of psychological investment in having your nightmare dystopian vision actually come to be. It's a remarkable. Somebody should do a study on it.
What's to become of us?
We'll be all right. A lot of these people are getting old and going bonkers. A lot of this stuff, you watch Fox or whatever, and it's the political equivalent of Viagra ads. It's pitched to old people who need a little extra jolt to get it up and get excited.
There's a lot of young ones. I don't know what.
I don't know if you really look. I've gone to Tea Party gatherings. If you look at that crew, it's mostly older people. If you look at who votes Republican, it's mostly older people. A lot of these people they're not going gently into that good night for a lot of them. I'm not saying there's not young people out there, but I'm saying that to a very large extent, this is an old person phenomenon. Old white people who see the country not what they want it to be,
right?
And they don't know how to handle it, and the numbers are against them, but they've got the guns. To use an old 1960s song by The Doors.
Yeah, but that sounds like potential trouble.
It does sound like trouble. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just saying that, to some extent, Barack Obama was wrong to think his reelection would break the fever, but eventually the fever has to break. This too shall pass because it's just demographically unsustainable.
Right. Well, I think we did it.
We did. We finished another episode. Hooray!
Well, I found that intellectually stimulating and generally depressing.
We should use that on the ads.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Something suggests that, no, that would not be a good idea. Thank you, as always,
Sure.
Mr. Potter. And thank you as well. Tomorrow! And we're Sokolowski-less.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's off gallivanting.
As only Tom Sokolowski can do.
Yes, indeedy. So it's just you and me. Have a good one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.